How's it going, guys? I'm Connor from Running Warehouse. I'm here with Simon, Category Director of Racing Footwear at Adidas. And today we are taking a deep dive into their latest carbon-plated racer, the Adidas Adios Pro 3. Now, Simon, the Adios Pro kind of came onto the market a few years ago, really made a big splash in the racing scene. You're seeing it on the feet of elite athletes, setting records. How did this shoe begin, and how has it got to where it is today?
Good question, big question first up. It really began because we recognized the need to get back into the game in a big way. We wanted to come back to the top of the podium. We wanted to give our athletes that secret weapon that they could go win races, set PBs, break records. And we knew we had to do something quick, which is what the Adios Pro 1 became. This was not like any other timeline shoe. It wasn't part of our normal creation process. The team really went, right, scramble, let's do something. Totally offbeat, produce this. Which, when we stood in Prague, September 2020, and watched Perez Chepchirchir cross the line and break a world record in this shoe, was an incredible moment. And that was immediate validation for, okay, we've got something here that's fire, and we're going in the right direction. So that was really where it came from. It was this idea of, okay, we need to get back to the top, we need to start winning again, and we need to get faith back from our athletes, back from runners, consumers, that we know what we're doing in the racing footwear space. And that was really where this whole project started from.
So it all began with the Adios Pro 1, then kind of a year later, so a very quick turnaround, we got a completely new shoe. How did this kind of shift from 1 to 2, and what was that like?
So really, one of the great things about working in this team is we live by the mantra of only the best for the athlete. That's an Adidas standard that this whole team comes to work every day and thinks that's what we have to do. So whilst we were, happy with the results we've seen in this, I say happy, extremely happy with the results we've seen in this, we know we could do more. This was a project that we pulled together. Then when we started to think about how we make it better, this is where the Pro 2 was born from. So yes, it was very quickly after, it was 18 months after we came to market with this one. But ultimately it was about innovating, continuous innovation. How do we make it faster? How do you improve running economy? How do you make it lighter, more comfortable? And that's where we got to with the Pro 2.
So Adidas continues to innovate, continues to make a faster shoe, and now in 2022, we have the Adios Pro 3. How do you make a fast shoe, basically your fastest shoe ever, even faster?
It's hard. It's the biggest question of them all, but it's one thing that the team absolutely committed to do. When we set off with the Pro 1, it was a firm commitment that we were going to produce something fast. We were going to work with our athletes and we were going to keep pushing those boundaries. The Pro 2 came along and we did exactly the same thing. We tweaked geometries, we tweaked shapes. How do we make it faster? With this shoe, the team went back into the same mode. What do we take from learners from the Pro 1, from the Pro 2? How do we ultimately combine the best of those both worlds and produce something even faster? So it was a big challenge, but I think what you have in your hand right now is a great result, and we're all excited to see this in races.
Now with these elite racing shoes, a lot goes into it, but a large amount of that magic comes from the foam. We've got the Lightstrike Pro continuing into this shoe. Tell us about this midsole, how it's different from those past versions, and what's going to create that really special feel.
The great thing with Lightstrike Pro, well, there's a couple of things. One, incredibly lightweight. You've got it in your hand right now, it feels quite light. It's very durable. We know, having seen how people run in a Pro 1 or a Pro 2, this shoe can keep going. The midsole keeps rebounding in an excellent way. The other thing is incredibly propulsive. That feeling of like soft cushion, but you're always getting something back from Lightstrike Pro is what makes it incredibly unique. It's a combination of all those things that makes this work. Within this shoe, much like the Pro 2, this is a double layer of Lightstrike Pro. I often think about it as not just one midsole, it's two together, which gives the runner cushioning, propulsion, that feeling of just continuous drive forward.
Now, from a stack height perspective, you guys are basically right up there at that limit.
Yep.
In terms of underfoot cushioning. But does this have more Lightstrike Pro packed into it over that last version?
So the stack height is exactly the same, but what we do with this shoe, we change the last, we rotate it slightly, and we move the drop from 8.5 to 6.5. That gives us a little bit more room in the forefoot to add some extra cushioning and some more foam, slightly. The reason we make that change though isn't just to get more foam into the shoe. It's to allow us to play up the other aspects of the shoe, like the rod construction, in a more seamless way, and hopefully helps that runner ease of transfer of force from their heel to their toe onto the next step.
Well, you talk about the rod construction, and that really is kind of what works together with the Lightstrike Pro to create that really unique ride. And you can see them peeking out in the midfoot. Is the rod construction a little bit different in the shoe, and how does that kind of continue to push forward for the athlete needs?
This is one of the biggest changes with Pro 3. So in the Pro 1, the Pro 2, you had the rods in the forefoot, you had a heel plate. Almost a system that worked together with a slight gap there in the middle. With the Pro 3, we go to a holistic system. We go right from the heel to the forefoot. We call it the pretzel in the heel. That's a colloquial term we're using for this construction. It basically allows, as I mentioned, that transfer of force more smoothly from heel right the way through the system. There's almost no break, if you like, of that energy transfer through the shoe. That's one of the biggest things we've changed, and one of the biggest things we're hoping to help improve performances within the midsole.
Now, with the rod setup, it is a little bit different than other companies going with traditional plates. And now with the even newer design, how are you finding the setup affects stiffness and how athletes kind of feel as they're going through their stride?
Good question. I think the first point is we land on rods. You mentioned plates within the industry. Rods are uniquely Adidas. And when we set about even doing the Pro 1, we wanted to bring something to market that was ours, that people could understand and recognize as being, that is an Adidas racing shoe. That's why we have this system. What we notice in the Pro 1 and Pro 2 isn't that people are giving us the feedback of, oh, maybe it's a bit stiff here, or we feel there's a bit of a disconnect within the shoe. Not at all. We know, though, from our lab testing and from all the work we do in Outsole and globally with testers, on machines, in labs, that we could get a better transfer of force that at the end of the day helps improve running economy. So it's almost runners love the Pro 1 and the Pro 2, but we think we're going to go to them and say, hey, try this is better for you. So it's not that we've had the feedback to say, oh, I'm not quite sure. We recognize through our testing that we could improve, and that's the main improvement of the shoe.
Now, moving on down to the outsole, there are some differences with this version. First thing that stood out to me is going to be the midsole cutouts. Can you tell us about kind of how you continue to kind of chop and make the lightest shoe possible?
Exactly, and this wasn't, just let's chop here and here and let's hope for the best. This pattern is based on a lot of data that we have from our lab. And that lab data essentially shows the trend of foot strike, heel to toe, and where the majority of people, starting with elite runners and general consumers and runners out there, where the majority of tread pattern goes. Which is why within this shoe, this cutout here, we felt from our learnings that this area maybe wasn't so much needed from a ground contact perspective, which is why it was easy for us to remove weight. And it gives us a good visual, which helps. From a forefoot cutout as well, that works in exactly the same way. So as we understood it from what we looked at, this area of the shoe isn't used as much by runners as they move through transition and toe off, which is why we cut out. Again, it allows us to expose a rod, which is cool, on shelf, on screen, whatever it might be, but it also helps us reduce weight. So really, these cutouts are born from science, they're born from data, and our understanding of, okay, this is how the runners move through their strike and move through transition, which is why we end up with these cutouts.
Now, these cutouts are obviously a very important factor with keeping weight down, but while keeping weight as light as possible is important, you also want to create a very inherently stable shoe for that full marathon distance. How has this shoe kind of become even more stable than those last versions?
Good question. One of the great pieces of feedback we had in the Pro 1 was that stability, the forefoot width, no cutouts, as you know, across there. So what we wanted to do with Pro 3 was still keep that transition, still keep that snappy toe off, but how do we make it slightly stable, as you mentioned? So we have a slightly wider base based on the new last, which just gives that little bit extra support and extra stability or feeling of stability as you move through transition and toe off. And again, we built all that with the data to understand that even these cutouts don't impact on that stability in the forefoot.
Now, on the topic of outsole, that is very important to traction, durability. Can you tell us about the latest outsole setup and how that is going to affect athletes?
So the traction tread, or the tread pattern, is built again based on the maps that we have from a transition perspective. You have simple one-layer rubber in the heel and through the majority of the forefoot, known from previous versions, incredibly durable, wearable in most conditions. And then we add a larger surface area of Continental in the toe off. Continental is a rubber compound that we work with on so many of our performance shoes and is so well known in the industry to have such high grip and traction. And we wanted to make sure within the Pro 3 that if someone moves through transition, toes off, probably quickly or more quickly than they might expect, they have a little bit more traction under their toe to just help them and give them that idea of support in a way of, I'm not going anywhere, this shoe's got me, and that's what we tried to do with this.
Now, finishing this shoe off, we've got the upper, the Cellar Mesh design. It's light, it's snug, but with uppers, with these kind of next generation super shoes, it's always important to keep weight down, but also have that support to get you through the marathon distance. Can you tell us about the upper and how it is the best yet?
So the upper is a move on of Cellar Mesh. It's a lightweight woven that we use across the entire surface area of the upper. From a support point of view, one of the key things we add here is a sling launch. This sling launch construction essentially wraps around the whole foot, enhancing that heel lockdown. So when you step into the shoe, lace up, your foot feels snug, feels like it's not going to go anywhere, and that just helps you get the most out of its engine. You don't want the upper to feel loose or uncomfortable or whatever it might be. You want your foot to be there, locked onto the midsole and ready to go. And that's what the sling launch adds. In the midfoot, towards the bottom of the vamp area, you have internal support as well, just to add a little bit more support for that lockdown in the midfoot and the quartz panel to make sure the foot feels nice and secure as you're going through the miles.
So from the midsole, outsole, upper, this shoe has been completely updated to be the fastest shoe yet. My final question for you is, what are the people going to use this for? From elite athletes to everyday racers, what is the Adios Pro 3 going to be used for in the racing lineup?
Our elite athletes are going to wear it to hopefully break PBs, their own fastest training course runs, their race records, or whatever it might be. This is their weapon to take on the half, to take on the full marathon in the fastest time that they can put down. From a maybe not right at the top pinnacle elite athlete to the likes of myself and just wider runners out there, this shoe should just be used to run fast and feel fast. It's exhilarating when you feel like you're knocking down your times or you're getting around the block quicker than you've ever done before. And what I want to see from this shoe is people going out there enjoying their runs, enjoying running fast, hopefully breaking some PBs and just going quickly.
So there you have it. That was our deep dive of the new Adidas Adios Pro 3. I've been a big fan of the Adios Pro for years, and now with version 3, we see a lot of those key characteristics of 1 and 2 continue to elevate to be the fastest shoe to date. If you're looking to get this shoe on your feet, you can find it here at Running Warehouse.